development agent and peace agents. You can find more on the pages of that said paper for today. A new report for frauds in prepaid meter use will take you to Standard Chartered Bank, who pumps in over CFA France 94.8 billion into the Cameroonian economy as reported in 2022. Moving over to the next paper for today, the Express. The Express for this morning. The Express for this morning have as lead story for today. The paper comes back. The paper comes back to this massacre at the West region. It says Birmingham in tears as suspected separatist fighters killed 9, kidnapped others in market raids. Get to read details on the pages of that paper. While Entrepreneurial Week, the paper report on focus laid on networking as development tool for youth entrepreneurship. And we'll move over to 2023 BRICS Summit Plus Forum. The paper reports on Cameroonian delegates entice foreign investors with sustainable economic projects. You can find more on the pages of the Express for this morning. From the Express, let's move over to the Cameroon Tribune. Cameroon Tribune of Marie Claire Nana for this morning. The paper have as lead story for today. It says increase in the Nakshigal Dam, as the paper reports that very soon the Nakshigal Dam will go operational after the visit of the Minister of Water and Energy Gaston Ilundu Usumba to the site over there. Bamboo Tools Division 9 perished in terrorist attack of yesterday. Cameroon, the paper talks on Cameroon chart. It says electricity interconnection project launch. You want to find details on page 10 to 11 on Cameroon Tribune newspaper for today. From Cameroon Tribune newspaper, let's take you now to Echo du Parlement. Echo du Parlement for this morning reports on the interim minister of mine, Kalitus Gentry. Fukalitus Gentry. It says November session of Parliament, Mines Minister gets tough time at National Assembly. That is what you can find on that paper for this morning. Let's take you now to The Nation. The Nation newspaper from Lagos have as lead story for this morning. The Nation is focused on government asks Supreme Court to extend old Naira notes lifespan. You can find more on that paper for this day. 5,000 kilometers of pipeline vandalized. That's what Kia laments. Get to read more on that paper for today. Security are challenges by Service Chiefs IG. You can find that story who completes herself on page 20 on The Nation for today. From The Nation, we move over to The Punch. The Punch newspaper for this morning. The Punch newspaper for this day have as lead story. The paper says states spend 1.7 trillion naira on trips meal. Others borrow 988 billion naira. Let's move over to the story that talks of 35 billion US dollars needed to execute concrete route map project as reported to us by Omahi. Let's take you to Lagos. Sound Olu's nice fraud in assembly orders probe. You get to read that story from Lagos State on the Punch newspaper for this morning. We'll move over to the Punch Sports Extra. The sports paper Punch Sports Extra for today is focusing on the world of football. It says missing links. You can find more on that paper. How Osimhen, Ruth Ekong, Nadir absent exposed Eagles' weaknesses against Lesotho Zimbabwe qualifiers for 2026 World Cup. We take you to Joshua, and Anthony Joshua fires back at Wilder. You want to find that story on that said paper on the boxing terrain. Let's take you to Jorginho's Arsenal future uncertain. You can get to read Jorginho's Arsenal future on page 4 on that paper. In that said page 4, Andre Onana hopeful of facing Everton after he sustained injury during the World Cup qualifiers game over there. You can find more on that sports paper for this day. From that sports paper, let's take you now to Cameroon, this time around with Mutation. Mutation newspaper of Thierry Diaga for this morning is more preoccupied in the energy sector as Cameroon Chad now signs this bilateral accord for Cameroon to export electricity to the Chadian Republic. You can find more on that paper. For today, Anglophone crisis, separatists killed 9 in the West region. And to the build-up of World Cup 2026, it says Cameroon 1, Libya 1. That was the showdown over there in the Libyan coastal city of Benghazi. Get to read more on how that encounter went on that page 5 on that said publication. We move over to Le Quotidien for this day. Le Quotidien talks of the road transport sector. President Paul Biya orders the free circulation of Chadian heavy duty trucks into Cameroon. You want to find that story on that said paper. Emergency in the health sector on prevention on epidemics. The paper reports on this meeting of the Minister of Public Health, Manawana Malachi, who says nothing is there to fear about as his ministry and personnel are up to task to combat whatsoever epidemic or health emergencies that want to show their ugly heads. Let's move over to Generation Libre for this morning. Generation Libre is interested in the Youth Connect Cameroon and Genasco. The paper talks of clarification by the Minister of Youth and Civic Education, Mununa Futso, in Youth Connect sector. Get to read that story on that said paper. The World Bank and Cameroon engages for better fruitful ties and cooperation ties for win-win solutions. You can find details on that story following the visit of the Vice President of the World Bank for Central Africa and West African sub-regions of the continent. Taking you now to this paper, Le Couleur talks of traffic the jam in the awarding of epaulets to police officers, as the paper titles that there's a lot of corruption that is engulfed in the awarding of epaulets to police officers. Higher education, the paper reports on the University of Douala, who validates her transformation and revolution sector. You can find more on that paper for this morning. We take you now to Innovation newspaper for today. Innovation newspaper for this morning is more preoccupied on the discourse of young lawyers in Cameroon. It says the discourse of the year regarding the mandates. Get to read more on Innovation newspaper for this morning. Innovation newspaper says dozens have been killed in the locality of Bamenyam in the West region, precisely the Bambutus division of the West region, by separatist fighters from neighboring Northwest region. Repair newspaper for this morning is interested in the inflation sector of the country. It says inflation in Cameroon now have a remarkable increase of 7.7% increase as prices of basic commodities like foodstuff, transportation fare, and housing are quite expensive or has just recorded an increase. Get to read more on that said paper for this morning. We'll move over to Francis Ngannou, who will confront Shiros for the November 23rd, December 23 showdown. You can find more on that said paper. Political space on the country, the paper reports on Calamity Kamto. What is that all about? Get to a copy of Repair newspaper and read on page 9 on that set publication for today. The economic newspaper of Eco News for this morning. Eco News for today is more interested in this story. It's more interested in this story of this slaughterhouse that was inaugurated, ultramodern slaughterhouse that was inaugurated recently in Betwa, as how the paper reports for meat and beef products that will be getting more hygienic conditions. And we take you to the transport sector. The paper reports on high instruction of the head of state, President Paul Biya, who orders free circulation of heavy duty trucks from Chad into Cameroon. That is what you can read on page 5 on that set publication for this morning. We take you now to Info Show for this day. Info Show talks of publicity of lies telling with the state broadcast, who failed yesterday to transmit signals of the qualification match for 2026 World Cup at CRTV. Get to read more on that set paper of Info Asho newspaper for today. We'll take you to, we remain in this press sector this time around with the private press that talks of 45 medals to be given to some 15 media bosses in the country. Get to read that story on page 6 to 7 on Info Asho newspaper for today. Le Question newspaper for this morning is interested in on this story. The paper comes to this interesting story on a Le Question. Can we have Le Question? Thank you. Le Question talks of the, it talks of Camrail, who comes out to attract more investors to come in and invest in that railway sector in the country. The Ministry of Public Health says everything is intact to make sure whatsoever epidemics that wants to show their faces, they are all equipped to fight them. This one follows a meeting that was accorded by the Minister of Public Health, Manauna Malashi, yesterday at the conference hall of the Ministry of Public Health. We remain with the health sector, this time around with the health paper, Quotidien Eco Santé. Quotidien Eco Santé talks of the fight against malaria. It says Cameroon received her first consignment of vaccine, of malaria vaccine that were transported by Brussels Airline yesterday. Get to read more on that on the pages of Quotidien Eco Santé for today. The International Center of Reference for Chantal Biya talks of the Council for Scientific Research now comes out with a great initiative in order to boost the health sector. This one follows a workshop that was held by health experts over there in Yaoundé. Le Crayon for today. Le Crayon newspaper comes back to the shutting down of the entire city of Douala following this mega crusade that was organized over the weekend by Kangu Cap. This is the pastor that charms people. That charms his charisma is quite energetic, as the Japoma Stadium was filled to brink by Cameroonians and Christians who went there to seek the face of God. So that is what Le Crayon Info tells us for today. Political games, the paper reports on Frank Biya and the flames of Le Frankist movement. Get to read that story on that said paper for today. Quotidien Emergence for today talks of the massacre of separatists in the locality of Birmingham in the Bambutus division of the West region. In the cocoa and coffee sector, the paper says subvention will be given to cultivators of cocoa and coffee in the country. We'll take you to this agreement of President Paul Biya, who signs a decree ordering the free circulation of heavy-duty trucks into the country from Chad. You can find more on that publication for this morning. Talking something else with the satiric newspaper of Le Populi. Le Populi talks of this bloody showdown by the separatists in Bangam village in Bambutus division, as the paper reports on 9 persons who were killed by separatists over there in the West region. And we take you to talk something else on what is happening at the Indomitable Lions Den following the 1-1 draw at Benghazi yesterday with the Libyans. You can find more on that set paper to the build-up of World Cup 2026 qualifiers. Loju for today says Bayangam, and a separatist attack leaves 9 dead in Bayangam village of Bambutus division. Libya, Cameroon, the Indomitable Lions have a draw. You can find more on that paper of Haman Mana's publication from Yaoundé of Loju. From Loju, let's move over to the next paper. We will be talking about Innovation newspaper for today. Innovation newspaper for today talks of the Cameroon Bar Association. The paper for today have this discourse of young lawyers in Cameroon by a prolific lawyer on the page of Innovation newspaper for today. The paper talks on what needs to be done to change the dynamics or image of Cameroon when it comes to the Indomitable Lions football team. Get to read more on the pages of Innovation newspaper for this morning. From Innovation newspaper, we transit to our international tablet for today. Our first stop of entry is Metro newspaper for today. Metro newspaper says tragedy on lads camping weekend as some 4 teenagers in the UK were gruesomely killed over there in the United Kingdom. Away from that, we move over to the Sun. The Sun says so young, making reference to the British teenagers that were killed by yet to be identified hoodlums. Get to read more on that set paper for today. The paper celebrates Kate Middleton, that says Red Queen, making reference to her high sense of fashion to the British monarch. The Financial Times from the UK for this day have as late story. The paper is interested in the economic situation, he says, of the UK. It says Jeremy Hunt to put 9 billion British pounds a year tax break for business at core of growth drive. That is what you can find on that said paper. Gaza hostage, he says Israel cabinet votes on deal. We'll move over to open artificial intelligence AI but in talks with Atman on return to end of chaos sparked by seconds. Get to read more on that economic or financial newspaper of Financial Times, the Financial Times for this morning. Away from the Financial Times, we move over to Daily Star. Daily Star for today is more preoccupied on this story that says it says never mind the glyph Richards. Get to read that story on that set paper. Days after Crony disease, Punk admits Corona was an inspiration to them. Get to read that story on page 5. End of the road for Top Gear. Oh, that's a beautiful television series will be ends in Top Gear. That is what that British tablet reports to us for today. The Guardian from London have as lead story for this morning. The Guardian says Hunt bows to Tory demand for tax cuts in bids to revive the British economy. Bodies of missing teenager found. That is the sad one there. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister, says deal is close on Israeli hostages that were taken by Hamas as the Palestinian-Israeli war continues. The Times for this day comes back to the bodies of the young teenagers that were found over there. He says the paper titles that as missing teens found dead after Snowdonia crash. What a sad one. You can find on that said paper. Hunt offer tax cuts for workers and businesses. You can find that story on the Times for today. How to spice up your marriage. That is a tip for marriage people. That's how to spice up their marriages. You can find that story on that said paper. We take a bow now with this paper. The last paper on our newsstands is Daily Telegraph for today. Daily Telegraph talks of the biggest tax cut for businesses in 50 years in the UK. In that said paper, Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister orders PMs to back ceasefire in exchange for hostages. And we'll move over to secrets of the middle class shoplifter. Get to read that story on Daily Telegraph for today. With Daily Telegraph, this is where we draw the curtains of this edition of the program Press Brief for this day, Wednesday, the 22nd of November. Thank you so much immensely for the